when we have a look at the question, the PMT is minus 300. This is because it represents outflow. We are going to lose the money, or Sophie is going to lose the money. It has a 3% annual interest. So as always, we just write I is equal to 3, which is missing from this typeset here. It's compounded monthly for 5 years. So monthly will, of course, affect the PY. When the monthly has been affected by 12, so it's now 12 rather than 1, the N is also written in terms of months. So even though it's 5 years, this is the same as 60 months. So you can write in your calculator 5 times 12. You don't even need to work it out. And because it's compounded monthly, this is why you put to CY is 12. And all you do is alpha solve. Once you have done that, you are going to get this answer. Now, differently to lots of other things in this course, you will have to write this to 2 decimal places because it's to do with money. Now, in this course, for the part B, you often want to use formulas which are not explicitly given to you in the exam. For example, find the total amount Sophie contributed and the total interest earned. So the amount she contributed, this is referred to by number of payments times payment amount. I would highly recommend you copy these 2 formulas down and memorise them. Or if you really get to understand finance, I would describe these as common sense formulas. So the number of payments is obviously 60. The payment amount is obviously going to be 300. So you are just going to do 60 times 300, which you can see is 18,000. Once we have done that, we want to do the total interest. So we can see for the total interest, it's going to be the difference between the future value, which is 19,366.93, minus the total contribution of the 18,000. So that is how much interest she's had to pay on this. So you subtract them, getting this answer. Now on question 2, this question is very similar. We are going to be getting these different values on our calculator. Our N is 120, like before, because it is going to do with the periods per year being 12. This will also be written in years. So we're going to have 12 times 10, which is 120. The I is 5. The PV is going to be 30,000 because when you take out a loan, you would like to be given the money. That's why it's positive. Now, with all loan questions, FV is always 0. And in this instance, we're working out PMT. The only thing I haven't discussed is the CY. The CY is also 12 in this instance because the question says compounded monthly. Now, what we have to do is alpha solve on the PMT, and the answer is given as negative. The reason why is because this is how much he is paying back, is outflow of money. But in the question, you would write the finance screen down in your exam, either horizontally or vertically. You'd write down the PMT, and then in your answer, you're going to change whatever you have to positive and say he pays 318.20. You don't even need to write it as a sentence. Now, the total amount he will repay and the total interest paid, very similar to the other 2 formulas. So total repaid is going to be the monthly payment times the number of payments. And you can see that this is exactly the same as this, but it's written in different terminology. And this one is total repaid minus loan principal. So once we've worked out the total repaid, we just substitute this into the second formula, and then we minus it from the original PV, which is 30,000. Now we are going on to question 3. In question 3, we're getting a little bit more tricky for here. It says 10,000 into an account with a 4% annual interest rate compounded yearly for 6 years. So this one is a little bit more different because in this instance we are going to be having are compounding yearly. So that's 1. In this question, because we are not doing an annuity where we're paying into something, or a loan where we're paying into something, or anything like that, an annuity, normally pays into yourself, as in you get money from the bank given to you, we are going to have PMT as 0. So it doesn't actually matter what we write PY as. So in this instance, if you wrote PY as 12, you would then have to affect the N by writing it 72. But because the PY has been written as 1, N can be written as 6. So we're going to have 6. Now we are going to pick the 4% because this is to do with the investment of 10,000. The 2% will be thought of later. So this should be 4% or 4, and the rest of it should make sense. Alpha solve on the FV. Obviously it's going to be positive. Now, part B, determine the future real value of her investment adjusted for inflation. Now, I think this is a little bit beyond the course, but I'm going to explain it to you. Normally, you would compare the difference between, say, 4% and 2% and just subtract them for this kind of question. But this is basically saying, let's say her thing is doing really well because it's having a compounding interest rate of 4%. So let's assume that instead of 4%, it should have gone up by just 2%. So it wants to reduce every application of this number by 2%. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 2% and we're going to subtract it from the 100%, which is 0.98. And because this happened for 6 years in a row, this is why we apply the power of 6. But I've never seen anything like this in the exam, but I'm giving this to you as top set so you understand in case you want to do something a little bit easier than this, and this helps you. So this next question, really quite straightforward. Again, I'll allow you to pause on the video if you want to have a go at that. And I'm now going to scroll down. As you can see, total loan repaid is often timesing. Total depreciation or interest is often subtracting. Ooh, this question, interesting. He wants to plan for retirement. So this time we are going to start off with a PV of 0. So this is an annuity fund, and I've sort of briefly discussed this, but not in depth. So with an annuity fund, you will start with 0, and then basically you want to build up the fund. So when you're saving for retirement, he's planning to put in money, 10,000 annually at a certain rate. So he is going to start with nothing in this fund, but he's going to be contributing 10,000. So for this, rather than the FV being 0, the PV is going to be 0. You can sometimes set these questions up a little bit differently. So first of all, 20 years, you put 20. Interest, 5.5. PV, 0, as discussed, PMT, given in the question. And then we're also going to have final value is what we want to calculate. Ooh, this is a little bit more challenging. So this time, we're going to put the PV as minus 50,000. Now, annuities, which questions where he wants to save for retirement, often start with PV being negative and PMT being negative. Basically, you're putting money into an account. It's not present with you. So you're going to lose the 50,000, and then on top of that, every month you're going to lose 10,000. And then you're going to basically substitute this to be 50,000 here, the FV to be 400,000, and everything else more or less stays the same apart from the PMT you're going to alpha solve for. Thank you for listening.